Most people think they understand how money works. They believe prices rise because of supply and demand. They believe governments spend money they already have. They believe crises are temporary shocks that eventually pass. All of that is wrong. Not technically wrong. Structurally wrong. And the reason this matters is simple. If you misunderstand the system, you will always be on the losing side of it. This video is not about politics. It is not about morality. It is not about blaming anyone. It is about understanding the mechanics that quietly decide who benefits and who pays during global crises. Because every crisis follows the same pattern. Different headlines. Same outcomes. Before we talk about who profits, we need to dismantle the most dangerous belief most people hold. The belief that crises hurt everyone equally. They do not. Crises are filters. They do not destroy wealth. They reallocate it. And that reallocation happens whether you are paying attention or not. Let us start with something familiar. When a global crisis begins, what do you notice first? Prices rise. Fuel becomes expensive. Food costs more. Rent increases. Savings feel weaker. From the outside, it looks like everyone is losing. But that is only what is visible at street level. What is not visible is what happens at the institutional level. At the balance sheet level. At the policy level. That is where the real story is. Here is the first uncomfortable truth. Money does not disappear during crises. It moves. And it always moves upward. This is not a conspiracy. It is a design outcome. To understand why, you need to stop thinking of money as cash in your hand and start thinking of it as a system of claims. Money is not value. Money is a claim on future value. When a crisis hits, governments respond quickly. Not because they want to. Because they have no alternative. They increase spending. They inject liquidity. They stabilize institutions. All of this sounds neutral. Even helpful. But the method matters more than the intention. Most crisis spending is not funded by taxes. It is funded by debt and monetary expansion. That single fact changes everything. Because when new money enters the system, it does not enter evenly. It enters through specific channels. Banks. Large institutions. Government contractors. Financial markets. Not households. This is known as the distribution effect of money creation. By the time new money reaches ordinary people, prices have already adjusted. This is why inflation feels unfair. Because it is. Inflation is not simply rising prices. Inflation is a transfer of purchasing power. Those closest to the source of money creation benefit first. Those farthest away pay the cost later. This is why during crises, asset prices often rise while wages stagnate. Stocks recover quickly. Real estate becomes more expensive. Commodities surge. Meanwhile, salaries lag. Savings erode. Debt becomes heavier. This is not accidental. It is a structural consequence of how modern economies respond to stress. Now here is where most people make a mistake. They assume this only applies to investors or the ultra-rich. It does not. It applies to anyone who owns assets versus anyone who depends primarily on wages. Crises reward position, not effort. If you are positioned close to capital, crises protect you. If you are positioned close to labor, crises punish you. This is why two people can experience the same global event and have completely opposite financial outcomes. One becomes more secure. The other becomes more fragile. And neither outcome is based on intelligence or hard work. It is based on exposure. Now let us address the most common objection. People say, but businesses fail during crises. Yes. Some do. Small businesses. Highly leveraged businesses. Businesses without political or financial insulation. But look closely at which businesses survive. Large banks are rescued. Systemically important corporations are stabilized. Key industries receive targeted support. Risk is socialized at the top and individualized at the bottom. Losses are absorbed by the public. Profits remain private. This pattern repeats in every major crisis. Financial crises, pandemics, wars, energy shocks. The names change. The structure does not. This is why it is misleading to say crises create winners and losers randomly. They do not. They reinforce existing hierarchies. Now pause for a moment and think about this. If the system consistently rewards the same positions during every crisis, then the system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. The real question is not why does this keep happening? The real question is why do most people keep expecting a different outcome? The answer is psychological, not economic. Most people are trained to think in narratives. Heroes, villains, events, resolutions. But economic systems do not operate on narratives. They operate on incentives and constraints. And incentives do not change just because the headlines do. This is why people feel confused after every crisis. They followed the news. They understood the story. But they still lost ground. Because they were watching the wrong level of reality. In this video, we are not going to stay at the surface. We are going to trace the money. Not emotionally. Not politically. Mechanically. In the next chapter, we will break down exactly who profits first when a crisis begins, and why those profits are almost invisible to the public. Once you see that, the rest of the system becomes disturbingly predictable. The mechanism no one explains. Most people believe global crises hurt everyone equally. That belief is comforting. It suggests fairness. It suggests randomness. It suggests no one is really in control. But the data tells a different story. Every major global crisis, war, financial crash, pandemic, debt collapse, produces the same result. A small group benefits disproportionately, while the majority experiences loss, stress, and instability. This is not accidental. And it is not mysterious. It is mechanical. To understand who profits during global crises, you must stop thinking emotionally and start thinking structurally. Crises do not create new systems. They activate existing ones. Let us start with the first mechanism. Government spending under pressure. When a crisis begins, governments respond immediately. They do not wait for tax revenue. They do not wait for growth. They spend. Defense budgets expand. Emergency programs are approved. Stimulus packages are announced. Debt ceilings are raised or ignored. This is always framed as necessity. And in many cases, it is. But necessity does not remove consequences. When governments spend beyond revenue, they finance the gap in two ways: borrowing and currency creation. Borrowing increases national debt. Currency creation reduces the purchasing power of money already in circulation. This is where the first silent transfer occurs. If you hold cash, your purchasing power declines. If you hold assets, your relative position improves. This is not ideology. It is arithmetic. The public experiences this as inflation. Rising food prices. Rising fuel costs. Rising rent. But inflation is not evenly distributed. People with fixed incomes absorb the shock. People with pricing power pass it on. People with assets often benefit from it. This is the first filter that separates winners from losers. Who has pricing power? During crises, demand does not disappear evenly. It concentrates. Energy, defense, logistics, healthcare, finance. These sectors do not operate in competitive free markets during emergencies. They operate under protection. Contracts are guaranteed. Demand is state-backed. Failure is absorbed by the public balance sheet. If a restaurant fails during a crisis, it closes. If a strategic supplier struggles, it receives support. This difference is structural, not moral. It means certain companies operate with downside protection while retaining upside potential. That asymmetry is where profit concentrates. This is why stock markets often recover faster than living standards. Capital moves first. Labor follows later, if at all. The second mechanism is less visible but more powerful. Financial markets react before people do. Markets are not forward-looking because they are intelligent. They are forward-looking because they are forced to be. Capital moves in anticipation, not reaction. When a crisis begins, financial institutions immediately reprice risk. They shift capital into sectors that benefit from volatility, scarcity, or state intervention. Defense stocks, energy producers, commodity traders, currency hedges, debt instruments. This happens quietly, long before headlines explain what is happening. By the time the public understands the crisis, positions are already set. This creates the illusion that markets are detached from reality. In truth, they are responding to a different reality. Markets do not care about suffering. They care about incentives. And crises rewrite incentives overnight. The role of central banks. Most people believe central banks exist to protect the economy. That is partially true. But their primary function is to maintain system stability, not individual prosperity. During crises, central banks intervene aggressively. Interest rates are adjusted. Liquidity is injected. Asset purchases are expanded. These actions prevent collapse. But they also reshape outcomes. When central banks inject liquidity, that money enters the system through financial institutions first, not households. This is known as the Cantillon effect, though most people never hear the term. Those closest to the source of new money benefit first. Those furthest away feel only the inflation. This is why asset prices often rise while wages stagnate. Again, not a conspiracy. A consequence of structure. Crises reward scale. Small actors are fragile. Large actors are resilient. During stable periods, competition rewards efficiency. During crises, survival rewards scale. Large corporations have access to credit. They have political leverage. They have diversified revenue streams. Small businesses have cash flow. When cash flow stops, they disappear. Crises accelerate consolidation. Market share shifts upward. Power centralizes. Barriers to entry increase. The public experiences this as fewer choices and higher prices. Corporations experience it as opportunity. This is why many of the most dominant global companies expanded during periods of chaos. They did not create the crisis. They were positioned to survive it. Positioning matters more than intention. The psychological misdirection. While these mechanisms operate, public attention is directed elsewhere. To personalities. To outrage. To moral arguments. To surface-level narratives. This is not necessarily coordinated. It is simply effective. Emotion consumes attention. Structure requires thought. As long as people argue about who is right, they do not examine how money moves. That is the final mechanism. Distraction. Crises overwhelm the human mind. Fear narrows focus. Complex systems fade into the background. This is when structural advantages operate unnoticed. Not because they are hidden, but because they are boring. Understanding this does not make you cynical. It makes you literate. Because once you see the mechanism, the pattern becomes predictable. And predictable systems can be navigated. In the next chapter, we will examine specific historical examples where these mechanisms played out exactly as described, across different countries, ideologies, and decades. Different crises. Same outcome. Nothing you are experiencing is accidental. High prices. Permanent uncertainty. Governments acting reactively. Corporations posting record profits during global stress. This is not chaos. This is a system that functions better under instability. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people never confront. Modern economic systems do not aim to eliminate crises. They aim to manage them. Because crises create leverage. When things are stable, power is limited. When things are unstable, power concentrates. And the people who understand this do not fear crises. They prepare for them. Let us break this down without ideology or emotion. Every large system has three components: decision makers, capital allocators, risk absorbers. In theory, these roles should be balanced. In reality, they are not. During stability, the public participates in the upside. During instability, the public absorbs the downside. This asymmetry is the core design feature. Look at what happens the moment a global shock occurs. Wars, pandemics, energy crises, financial collapses. The language changes instantly. Emergency powers, temporary measures, necessary sacrifices. But notice what never changes. Ownership structures remain intact. Debt obligations remain enforceable. Contracts favor capital, not labor. Only the burden shifts. During crises, governments do three things almost without exception. First, they expand spending dramatically. Second, they relax fiscal constraints. Third, they centralize decision-making. This is always framed as protection. In practice, it creates a controlled funnel. Money flows downstream through institutions, not directly to individuals. Banks are stabilized first. Markets are stabilized second. Citizens are stabilized last, if at all. This order is not a coincidence. It reflects who the system is built to preserve. Now let us talk about profit. Not revenue. Not headlines. Profit. Who actually profits during global crises? Not consumers. Not small businesses. Not wage earners. The consistent winners fall into four categories. First, financial intermediaries. Banks, funds, and institutions that sit between money creation and money use. They profit from volatility. They profit from spreads. They profit from government guarantees. When risk is socialized and profit is privatized, intermediaries thrive. Second, asset holders. Inflation destroys cash. But it inflates asset prices. Real estate. Equities. Commodities. Hard assets. If you already own assets, crises protect you. If you rely on income, crises erode you. This is why inequality widens during periods of instability, not shrinks. The system rewards positioning, not effort. Third, strategic suppliers. Energy producers. Defense contractors. Infrastructure monopolies. These entities operate in protected markets. Demand becomes non-optional. Prices become flexible. Competition becomes irrelevant. Their profits are justified as national necessity. But necessity does not mean accountability. Fourth, policy-adjacent entities. Organizations close enough to policy to anticipate change, but distant enough to avoid blame. They do not create rules. They position around them. This is where information becomes more valuable than labor. Knowing what is coming matters more than working harder. Now here is the part that makes people uncomfortable. These outcomes are not the result of corruption in the traditional sense. They are the result of incentives. Systems do exactly what they are incentivized to do. If crises reward certain behaviors, those behaviors will repeat. If instability increases control, instability will persist. Not consciously. Structurally. This is why global crises feel endless now. They overlap. They compound. They never fully resolve. Because resolution would reduce leverage. And leverage is the currency of modern power. Most people are taught to ask the wrong question. They ask, why does this keep happening? The correct question is, who does this benefit if it continues? Once you ask that, patterns emerge very quickly. This does not mean there is a single villain. That idea is childish. Systems do not need villains. They need participants. Millions of people acting rationally within a flawed structure will produce outcomes that feel irrational from the outside. And here is the hardest truth. Complaining does nothing. Understanding changes everything. Because once you see the system clearly, you stop reacting emotionally. You stop expecting fairness from structures that were never designed for it. You start making decisions based on reality, not narratives. In the next chapter, we will confront the most dangerous illusion of all. The belief that someone else will fix this. Because that belief is the final layer of control. By this point, most people listening already understand something important. They understand that global crises are not random. They understand that money does not disappear during chaos. They understand that someone benefits, and it is rarely the people who suffer the consequences. And yet, here is the uncomfortable truth. Even after understanding all of this, most people will still lose. Not because the system is unbeatable, but because understanding is not the same as positioning. This is the final illusion. The illusion that awareness alone is protection. History proves otherwise. During every major crisis, information was available. During every collapse, people knew something was wrong. During every inflationary period, warnings existed. And yet the outcomes barely changed. The same groups benefited. The same groups suffered. The same excuses were repeated. This is not a failure of intelligence. It is a failure of incentives. The system is designed so that knowing the truth does not automatically grant you leverage. Let us break this down carefully. When crises hit, most people respond emotionally. Fear increases. Consumption patterns shift. Short-term thinking takes over. People rush to preserve what they already have instead of positioning for what is coming next. This reaction feels logical, but it is exactly what the system expects. Because crises do not reward defense. They reward alignment. The institutions that profit during crises are not guessing. They are positioned long before the public reacts. They understand timing. They understand liquidity cycles. They understand that panic creates discounts, policy shifts, and forced decisions. Meanwhile, the average person does the opposite. They delay decisions. They wait for clarity. They expect stability to return before acting. By the time clarity arrives, the opportunity window has already closed. This is why crises always feel unfair in hindsight. Because the game was decided early, quietly, and structurally. Not through intelligence. Through access and positioning. Here is another uncomfortable reality. Most people cannot fully escape this system. Not because they are incapable, but because the system limits their options. Access to capital matters. Access to time matters. Access to stable income matters. This is why crisis winners tend to come from the same groups repeatedly. Not because they are smarter, but because they are structurally insulated from downside while remaining exposed to upside. This is also why many people fall into a dangerous psychological trap. They start believing the system is rigged beyond repair. This belief feels justified, but it is also paralyzing. Because while the system is unequal, it is not static. There are still degrees of positioning available. But they require discipline, patience, and emotional restraint. Not speculation. Not gambling. Not chasing trends. Just alignment. Let us talk about what alignment actually means. Alignment means understanding where pressure flows, not where headlines point. During crises, pressure flows toward liquidity providers, essential services, infrastructure, and policy-protected sectors. It does not flow toward novelty. It does not flow toward hype. It does not flow toward whatever is trending on social media. This is why most people lose money trying to outsmart crises. They confuse noise with signal. They react to narratives instead of incentives. They move when everyone else moves. And mass movement is rarely rewarded. Now comes the part most channels avoid saying out loud. There is no single action that guarantees safety during crises. There is no asset that always wins. There is no strategy that removes risk. What exists instead is probability management. Reducing exposure to fragility. Increasing exposure to systems that absorb shock rather than amplify it. This is boring. This is slow. This does not feel exciting. And that is precisely why it works. Crises reward patience disguised as inactivity. They punish urgency disguised as decisiveness. This is also why many people who seem calm during crises are not calm at all. They are simply positioned. They made decisions years earlier that insulated them from immediate pressure. They are not smarter in the moment. They are calmer because they do not need to react. This is the advantage most people underestimate. The ability to do nothing when others are forced to act. Now let us address the final psychological barrier. Most people believe they are late. Late to understand. Late to position. Late to benefit. This belief is partially true. But it is also exaggerated. Crises unfold in phases. The early phase benefits insiders and institutions. The middle phase benefits structured capital and disciplined actors. The late phase benefits almost no one. Most people enter during the late phase. They respond when prices have already moved. When policies are already implemented. When narratives are already mainstream. At that point, opportunity is minimal. But here is the key insight. Crises are not one-time events. They are recurring features of modern economic systems. Debt cycles, currency pressure, geopolitical instability, and demographic shifts guarantee this. This means the real advantage is not predicting the next crisis. It is preparing for repeated instability. People who succeed long-term are not crisis hunters. They are volatility survivors. They design their lives, careers, and finances around uncertainty instead of stability. This requires a mindset shift most people resist. Because stability feels safe. But stability is often an illusion maintained by leverage and debt. When stability breaks, it breaks violently. Those who assume calm is permanent are the most exposed. This is the final lesson of this chapter. Global crises do not reward intelligence alone. They reward structural positioning, emotional discipline, and patience. They punish urgency, overconfidence, and reactive behavior. Most people lose not because they are ignorant. They lose because they are forced to play a game they did not design. This channel exists to make that game visible. Not to promise escape. Not to sell shortcuts. Not to create fear. But to explain incentives clearly. Because clarity does not guarantee success. But confusion guarantees failure.